the boundaries of Eden, for our strength comes from Lucifer himself. We shall inherit Adama, for this is our legacy, to rule in future realms.
Infernal redemption by means of vengeful fires, satanic imagery, Luciferian illumination, and everything cooked up with a pleasant romantic flavor. This is what black metal should be about nowadays. This is what black metal was about in its early days, and this is what black metal is about on this latest release from WarHymn from Bucharest, called The Cult of Primordials. We have here both of their releases so far. The first one is Gnosis and the second one is called Cult of Primordials. The first one was released on Narcoleptica Productions and the second one on the famous Romanian label Loud Rage Music, not so long time ago. If we are to try to highlight or to stress the main point of attraction on this particular material, I wouldn't say it's the music, I wouldn't say it's the production, the concept, the lyrics, no. The main point of attraction here, with Eve on the cover in a love relationship with her snake in an act of symbiosis, the main point of attraction here is poetry, the quality as such of the poetic act. Now, the main point is that when you use poetry into incantations, into invocations, into spells, into curses, even into a love statement that you make to your future spouse, all these kind of things become stronger. The incantation or the invocation becomes stronger if you put a poetic vibe into it, because the demon, and the feminine demon as well, reacts first and foremost to poetry. So if you want your invocation or your curse to work, you have to make it really, really poetic. And bringing poetry into curses, into spells, into invocations, into incantations, and into prophecies speaks about the joy of playing black metal, because this is the joy of black metal, to put a poetic vibe into your strong words. It's pretty much like a Christian prayer. If you don't use some kind of poetry when you pray to your God or to your gods, then the respective divinity is more or less unlikely to react. And poetry is not so much about what you say, about why you say what you say, but poetry is always to be found in how you say it. And WarHymn places a strong accent on this how question, how you use the poetic element, and that's why the release is filled with acts of recitation, theatrical delivery, interpretation, recounting, declamations, soliloquies, especially when Eve is speaking, and we have a nice soliloquy from Eve on this release, and many other such, I would call them rhetorical ambitions. Well, now the result when you do this kind of a job, so to say, when you put poetry into your incantations, is that you achieve a hymnal character, a pronounced, I would say, epic dimension, which in this case pretty much makes you visualize, let's say, imposing monuments of ancient civilizations, and the overall feeling is that of is a sense of Apollonic elevation. And in this regard, the fact that the founding father of this project and the leader of WarHymn, called Chevy, or Alin Sablovsky, I think, Chevy, which plays the guitar, the keyboards, and some of the vocal parts on this release, studied architecture and urbanism, is far from being a coincidence, because I think a French guy called Le Corbusier said it: architecture is the learned game, the correct and the magnificent game of forms being assembled into light. So this is exactly what this release is doing, is assembling into light forms by playing the game in a magnificent way. Now, in this regard of people following their professional vocation, perhaps into the black metal scene, I would say that an outstanding contribution to this album is being made by the guest musician Monica Barta from Kratos. Kratos was a very famous band into the early years of Romanian metal. What we have here is a small monumental masterpiece of the Romanian underground, release in the 90s for the Romanian label Bestial Records. It's the album Looking Behind the Mirror, where Monica Barta first played with Kratos, and in this period she did the vocal parts. I think here we can see a younger version of Monica Barta, and also a younger version of Daniel Dron, I suppose, when they started playing that charmful metal of the 90s on the Looking Behind the Mirror material, which is not being brought back to the market for reasons I don't understand, because, as I said, this is a monumental release in the Romanian metal underground scene. And on the second Kratos album, Arlecchino, she also played the bass lines and not just the vocal parts. So this is again our guest musician Monica Barta, who pretty much delivers an outstanding, I would say, vocal performance. Outstanding in the sense that the way she does the voice pretty much brightens up the aura instead of darkening the aura the way some musicians do it in black metal. Her performance has the quality to brighten up the aura, and if you brighten up the aura with your vocal style, the result is that nothing is dense, everything is spacious and airy, and pretty much, to come back to the architecture, like a beautiful facade of a building. And she gives a compatible and consonant haunting quality to the songs, especially when she recites from Eve, making the songs meditative with a natural finesse and elegance, stemming from the sincerity and from a sincere interpretation which she kind of brings into these songs. Apart from Monica Barta, I would say that another highlight within the lineup of the band would be the addition of a Bulgarian drummer called, I think, Filipov is his name, who made a massacre of perfection on the songs Akral Necrosis, where he played. So basically this is pretty much the addition of Filip Filipov on drums is pretty much a guarantee of consistent fierceness and quality regarding the drumming style. If the first one, Gnosis, was a solo project by Chevy, the second one has a full lineup, and apart from Monica Barta, the guest musician, and Filip Filipov, we also have Karp Tiberiu or Mr. Hex, I suppose, on the bass. An interesting thing about the way the bass lines are being achieved on this album is that for some reason when you hear a certain quality of the bass line into black metal releases, pretty much that quality comes from a musician that listens to Megadeth. And I can, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, maybe I'm insane, but I can recognize some dark Megadeth flavor being brought into black metal. So I believe this is the main point of attraction that Mr. Karp Tiberiu brings to the table in here. And also another guitarist on this release is Razvan Riza, who also brings some extra symphonic additions, and these extra symphonic additions brought by Razvan kind of put another brick on the diabolical prevalence of this release. Now the question is, are we dealing here with an aggressive album or with a mid-paced black metal album? I would say yes, it is an aggressive release, but aggressive in what way? Or aggression comes from where? I would say the aggression of this release is tightly bound to the act of teaching. Yeah, so it teaches the listener some basic notions in an aggressive manner. It pretty much teaches the mortals prime historical lesson, and the prime historical lesson being taught by this release is that, how should I say it, Luciferian illumination is a fertile ground for sowing the seeds of human civilizations and immemorial edifices built with vengeful fires instead of mortar. This is how I would read the aggressiveness of the release. Now, to analyze it a little bit further on, if we go into the compositional structure of the album, I would say that this is that kind of material that is constructed and sustained at the level of progressions and at the level of twists as well by means of guitar riffs, and that the 5 compositions that we can find in here are pretty much like 5 paintings that you can find in a church or a temple or some other things like this, and it's pretty much Chevy does the guitar in a manner that a painter uses the principles of painting in his paint, namely the guitar, like in a painting, draws the lines of force, and the guitar is contorting the shapes, and basically the guitar lines are what make the details blend together into the concept. So I would say that it is guitar driven, and that the guitar offers a firm foundation and a strong backbone within the rhythmic section. And we are not actually talking about drenched guitar style, but about very dry and clean guitar parts, and also some classical strings are being used every here and there. Further on, I would say that the musicians do not use any kind of psychedelic moments of insanity, with the exception of some savage folk passages where for some moments we have certain dithyrambic, I would call them, values that seem more or less derived from the dances of Dionysus, which kind of are the kind of dances and folkish elements that warriors use when they prepare for aggression. If you want a reference, probably something like the rugby team of New Zealand is doing before starting the rugby match in order to scare the opponents. Now, I would say that to further analyze a little bit the composition style, I would say that all the instruments are in a peaceful relationship to each other. There are no chaotic transition, there are no broken lines on this album, so everything here is about the mid-paced, effective architectural finissage, to use a French word, because everything is pretty much constructed around the idea of the light and of the clarity of the human intelligence, around the luminous infinity of the human thoughts. And on atmospheric songs, such as the first one and the last one. The first one is Dominus Terrae Lumiels Fall, and the outro song Opus. There are two atmospheric compositions. Interesting enough, both of them seem to pay some sort of tribute to the early Tiamat releases, the Astral Sleep and the Wild Honey. And when you use those kind of atmospheric elements from the early Tiamat and you blend them into black metal, it's a gorgeous addition, because the atmosphere and the mystery and the darkness make the metal parts even stronger. So I would say that on the atmospheric songs there is a early Tiamat influence. And if we look at the fourth song, Fresh Spring in This New World, here, not necessarily from a technical point of view, but from the vibe, from the way some passages are executed, pretty much resembles Limbonic Art, early releases in a Horns Dementia or Moon in the Scorpio. And should this CD have been released back in the 90s, Nocturnal Art Production Records would have been probably the first weapon of choice for the band. And as to the message of the album, there are no overabundant keys. Only the necessary keys are given for you to be able to decipher the message and to unlock the hidden doors. So there are just the required amount of ideological keys for you to be able to decipher. So this is an album that does not play on the eclectic side or on the evasive side. The keys are clear, the doors are clear that you need to open when you want to get deeper and deeper into the message. As far as production is concerned, I would say that from the point of view of production, we are dealing with a very stable cellular structure. There are no mutations in here, nothing really mutates. Nothing is overstated, nothing is overpronounced, and nothing is over-challenging. The songs never tend to go overboard or never tend to overstay their welcome. They are just as long as they need to be, and nothing is over-processed or overproduced. We do not find things that are buried into production. Nothing is really low or high in this production. There are no high-pitched elements dominating the soundscape. Everything is balanced, which is pretty much the way an architect or an urbanist would construct the buildings. This is how Chevy constructed the music, which is a very good thing. Maybe the negative point is when you do it like this, you kind of take a little bit of the edge off. You lose a little bit of the aggression. And personally, I would have preferred some more aggressive sides, some more rapid passages, because black metal is also about rapid moments, about accelerations, to feel the blood boiling inside yourself and coming back into your throat. But otherwise, I would say it's a little bit of a tamed black metal, but not in no way a lifeless black metal. Now, coming back to other things that need to be discussed in here, is the, let's say, occult value of the album, the metaphysical flavor of the album. Pretty much what these guys are doing in here is they kind of apply the principle of Schrödinger's cat, the principle being that you have a cat locked in the box, and as long as the box stays closed, the cat is both dead and alive. To apply this one to black metal, I would say that as long as Pandora's box stays closed, the individual is living simultaneously into this reality and on the other side as well, and this is a balanced relationship. And black metal was a musical genre capable to open up this box as long as the audition lasts, and to bring that other side into our reality. So pretty much these guys are opening the box. Schrödinger's cat comes out of the box, and depending on the quality of your spirit and of your spiritual elevation, the cat will be alive or dead. Concerning the references or the bibliography, the books used behind this release, here I kind of have an objection, because it's an open statement. They used the book called Morals and Dogma, written in 1871, I think, by Mr. Albert Pike. It's a book about, it's a collection of texts about, I would say, comparative religion, ritualistic, esoteric philosophy, comparative etymologies, if you want, symbolism, numerology, things that have to do with, let's say, magic. The problem is, there are two problems with this book, Morals and Dogma, written by Albert Pike. The first problem is that he kind of collected all these materials in order to regroup them around his own obsessions and his own ideas, and he used some of the messages from the occult world into a Masonic trend to serve more or less a political message, namely that the root of all religion is the same. The creation of the universe started from the cosmic egg or from the Orphic egg, and from this, following chapters and chapters, he arrives at the conclusion that since the root of all religion is the same, since we are all the creation is drawn from the same Orphic egg or cosmic egg, then we should have a single global government. Now, this would probably be the apocalypse. Many people have tried to do it, even in the recent days. Nowadays, so tendencies towards establishing a global, single global world domination existed and exist even nowadays. So this would be one problem that I have against Mr. Pike's book Morals and Dogma. The second problem that I have with this book, and why I consider it a second-hand source of information, and not only me but also the French philosopher René Guénon has the same opinion, this is more or less a plagiarized book, and the plagiarism took place from a book written by a French occultist called Eliphas Lévy, who before Mr. Pike wrote a book called Dogme Rituel de la Haute Magie. And he pretty much, Mr. Pike, took from Dogme Rituel de la Haute Magie by Eliphas Lévy a lot of ideas without providing the necessary reference. But again, those who read Mr. Pike's book realized that he was not very concerned about academic references and so on and so forth. So I would have preferred to see Eliphas Lévy's book in here instead of Albert Pike's book. Now, another interesting thing about the release is that on certain songs, both of them actually, we see a manifestation for or a statement towards rebuilding the old temples, the temples of the Greek gods and goddesses, the temples of the Norse gods, and so on and so forth. And the way I perceive the message of the release is that, you know, if you want to build again the old temples, this is something easier said than done, because before rebuilding the old temples, you need first of all to build a temple inside yourself, and then to build a physical structure as such. And same goes for a very fashionable thing within black metal, which has to do with church burning. Before going and burning a church the way the guys did in the early 90s, what you should do, and what this two releases encourages you to do, is to burn the church inside yourself, to burn the Christian inside yourself, and after that to see if it's necessary to actually go into the outer world and burn the physical artifact as well. Now, this was a first release done into English for this channel that was up to this point only in Romanian, because we received a couple of messages from across the borders telling us, you Romanian savages, why don't you produce something in English for us ignorant English people to be able to understand as well what you are doing in there. well, if you ask us so nicely to produce something in English, how can we refuse? Of course, there you have a first English review. We were retarded before, but it took us 2 weeks to learn English, and you have a first English review section on this channel. Now, any commercial ambitions aside, what you need to do is to try to find some money in your pockets and buy these 2 releases, because this way you help the artist survive. If you don't do it, and if you don't support the underground scene, then the survival of such bands will pretty much depend on situations, which are not always very happy situations. Yeah. This being said and done, keep the black flame burning. Thank you.
And this is how we fell from grace and conquered the land of Nod.